Hello, and welcome to the annual stop of the Free Market Roadshow in Bulgaria. It has become now a tradition for the Free Market Roadshow to visit the AUBG campus here in Blagoevgrad. So welcome everyone from the Andrei Delchev Auditorium in our Balkansky Academic Center. And we have the pleasure of having President David Evans open the event and say a few welcoming words. Sir.
Thank you, Momchil. Good morning. As Momchil said, I'm David Evans, and I am the president of the American University in Bulgaria, and I'm happy to welcome you to the 7th event in the annual series of the Free Market Roadshow here at AUBG. We're happy to host this event because it's important to share the ideas of the market, as AUBG was founded in 1991 to help Bulgaria establish a democratic society and a market economy, and this remains a really critical part of our mission. So anytime we have the opportunity to share discussions and ideas about the marketplace and how the marketplace might function and how it might be improved or reformed in some way, we're more than happy to do that. And so we're delighted to have a partnership with the Free Market Roadshow and to continue this conversation here on campus after a brief hiatus during COVID when we were doing it online. We're glad to welcome everybody back in person. So please enjoy the day, enjoy the discussions and the presentations, and thank you again for being with us today.
Thanks, sir. We have quite a diverse set of guests, and we have a set of or a number of discussions and topics we will have today. One of them stems directly from one of the major points of concern here, not only in Bulgaria but in the Balkans in general, as we share a lot of common history, especially over the past, say, 50 to 70 years. And among the topics related to the free market, of course, a major topic is the freedom to create, to establish, to set companies, and to have entrepreneurial action. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome two of our guests today, Mr. Admir Chavalic. Sir. Admir is the founder of a libertarian association called Multi in his home country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He is also a lecturer in economics, so a dear colleague of ours here at the University of Tuzla. And congratulations, or shall I say something else? Indeed. Newly elected member of parliament in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we are absolutely delighted to have him here as our guest. And a second guest, that would be Mr. Simon Sarevsky, a fellow specialist and expert in financial management, also associate researcher with the Austrian Economic Center in Vienna. And his second visit to AUBG Blagoevgrad. I see that you like it really. We like you being back here. So this just underlines how vivid this discussion is. I hope you still remember some of the topics we discussed last year so vividly. We have our first panel on entrepreneurship in the Balkans. And when one says entrepreneurship, immediately thinks of people like Joseph Schumpeter. There are plenty of theories related to that. And we, as sometimes somehow candid or naive or over-enthusiastic and optimistic about human nature, economists or social scientists embedded in the Austrian tradition or in the free market tradition, we maybe overlook, if not tend to forget, that people may have different kinds of entrepreneurial activities the ones that we cherish, the ones we celebrate, the ones we try to showcase, where we see creation of value, creation of wealth, where we see novelty, we see a pioneering spirit, where inventions are translated in innovations. And then yet another kind of entrepreneurship, which is more related to things like, to use a Marxist terminology, spoliation, or rent-seeking, or techniques of easing a deal, very, very common and very popular here in our part of the world. As one unnamed Bulgarian politician would say, it's a sensation of corruption. It's not truly corruption, right? It's more of a sensory approach to corruption. And I have then a cognitive, of course, bias when it comes to this. But entrepreneurship in the Balkans seems to challenge a little bit, and that would be my first approach to the topic and the subject, seems to challenge a little bit the commonly accepted theoretical framework of what entrepreneurship shall be. So, is there, and maybe there would be one day, a reason to consider from a theoretical standpoint, based on what we observe over the past 30 years here in the Balkans, maybe a new chapter to open in economic theory and define entrepreneurship in the Balkans way, so to speak. Admir?
Very tough question, but before that, like I like to say thanks, like, for organizing this event and keeping the traditional free market roadshow. Like, it's really important. Sometimes we don't understand the importance of spreading the idea of freedom and so on, especially towards like young generations, the future leaders, especially in the region of Balkans. Like, these people here that studying probably will be entrepreneurs, will be politicians, will be those who change the paradigm, the situation, and so on. So I really truly admire and bless you all for that. Regarding the entrepreneurship in Balkans, let's start with the really broad definition of entrepreneurship. It's really comical. It says like that the birth itself is an act of entrepreneurship by any standards. Why? Like the baby from the female body took some risk to unknown in order to get some profit, to be better. So, like, if you put it that way, like everyone is entrepreneur, like in some ways. So, did the Balkan baby bribe or did something to move faster? So on, I don't know. I'm not the expert there. But generally, like every one of us is an entrepreneur, and the theory, like back that. When you speak about big corporations, you have intra-entrepreneurs. When you speak about small, even if you speak about informal economy, you have entrepreneurs. Yeah, unfortunately, in politics, you have so many entrepreneurs, but they're usually corrupt, like they're entrepreneurs in corrupt way. I'm also glad you mentioned Schumpeter, like as a fellow or follower of Austrian's School of Economics. I always emphasize, and we forget that the only thing that really that we integrated in a common educational system across the world, even in China, is a theory about entrepreneurship. And it's really, if you look at the history of economics, it's really an Austrian thing. Like Schumpeter knew Mises, they hang out with Hayek, and eventually, if you go further, like Peter Drucker, that everyone is like from field of management, is saying that he's a father of management and so on. It's actually, he's related to Schumpeter, and he was an Austrian. He's related to Mises. He was at the meetings with Mises. Of course, he was really young. He was more as assistant there and so on. So there's a huge treasure in our educational system, which is Austrian, with Austrian background. And that's the only thing that's formalized. Usually Austrians are put in footnotes. They're not like, commonly practiced across the world educational system. When it comes to Balkans, I read so many and did so many research about entrepreneurship. And to put things simple, we have a strong energy, entrepreneurship energy. Unfortunately, it's not used. So all the researchers from Bulgaria, Bosnia, Macedonia, and so on, they show that there's this huge potential, huge energy for entrepreneurship. And it's, why do I say that? Like, in some societies, it's not like that. In some societies, I really travel all the world and so on, you just don't have a feeling of that energy, and there's no real potential. That potential can be made maybe in 50, 100 years and so on, unfortunately for those cultures. That's the first axiom of entrepreneurship in Balkans. The second thing is, unfortunately, that energy is not channeled well. So we don't have formal channels. For formal channels, you need to have institutions. And when I say institutions, like, I really mean institution in formal and informal ways. It's really easy to change formal institutions, like legal system, like educational system, so easy. I say easy compared to informal. But informal institutions mean culture, they mean language, they mean your family, ancestor background, and so on. They are the hard ones to change, and there we have a problem on Balkans. All the things that you mentioned, like the corruption, unfortunately, the perception of corruption, you know, there's an index called like that, perception of corruption. They're all mostly based in informal institution, then informal. The formal institutions are just results of informal institutions. I like to speak about that when you speak about language. Like, we're speaking right now in English language. Why? Because it's entrepreneurship friendly, it's business friendly. And when you speak on Bulgarian or Balkan language, like, it's not so friendly towards business. Like in my language, like Serbia, Croatia, Bosnian, like, we usually have so many statements saying like, don't go far, don't go high, in a good way. Take a middle, like, you know, like, it's not good to be different from others and so on. We have so many things, like from your grandparents, parents, and so on, they're teaching you like that. So we have those barriers, and unfortunately we need to use, for instance, like English language to overpass those barriers, because we don't have so many classical liberal people who can change language or think about that. So energy, lots of energy, bad channels. What's the result? And that's on my first take. The result is, like, if you have lots of potential, if you have bad channels, that all moves to one direction, and unfortunately the results of that in Balkans is lots of informal economy. In Bulgaria, I think it's 27%. But you have a good trend from 2016, like from 30% it's falling, but in all Balkanic countries, like 30% of economy is informal economy, gray economy, or how do you call it? And why is that economy, the segment of economy bad? Although I'm an MP, I'm also classical liberal. It's not bad because people are not paying taxes. Like, thanks God that we have people that don't pay taxes. Like, I will say that. Like, it's not. I'm not a classical politician. It's bad because.
I think your political career just ended.
No, but I won't mandate on saying that. So, but they're not. There are not lots of us. Like, I'm the only one.
But you're being filmed.
Okay. Thanks God we have those people, because it's from ethical point of view, it's better to invest money in your family education, in your healthcare, in saving lives, in charity and so on, than to give to politicians, to give government, so we can redistribute and so on. That's like classical liberal one-on-one. But why do I care about informal economy? Not because of that reason. Usually people like, I think even Bastiat noticed that, like, from the medieval period, like, the taxman always had great strategy. He said, like, pay taxes. Look, that guy is not paying taxes. Like, he's a bad guy. So all the distraction is on that guy who's not paying taxes. No one is looking at us who are actually spending taxes on the wrong way and so on. So that's not the main reason. The main reason, and using Hernando de Soto argument here, is that these people who are in informal economy, they cannot be institutional, they cannot be members of society in a full way, they cannot use full potential, they cannot use institutions, and they cannot upgrade. South America has huge problem with that, and that's why Hernando Soto wrote so many good papers on that. What does that mean in practice? And I'll finish with this. It means that those fellows in Bulgaria, everywhere around Balkans, they cannot get a credit from a legal institution, from a bank. Why do they need credit? They need credit to expand their business, because without credit in this monetary system, you just cannot have a viable business, big business and so on. So we are keeping those 27% of economy, we're keeping them without resources, credit resources, healthcare maybe, good educations, property rights, generally like the system that's keeping their enterprise and so on. And eventually when they die or members of their family die or they have an accident, they cannot get insurance, their business fails. And that's the main reason why I argue that we need to use that energy and we need to change institution to channel that energy, not to have informal economy. Not because they're not paying taxes, but because those people are totally like, there's like different caste of societies if we think about business. And meaning that they cannot grow. And societies that cannot grow, and lots of research was done this, like just to give you hints, one of the great reasons why, for instance, like Islamic empires fell down, is that they didn't have institution of corporation. We take corporation, incorporated life for granted, but that's one of the biggest innovations in economy and law. Why? Because you can create a corporation that can outlive you, like, so you die and corporation as an independent legal entity, and only man can figure out, animal could not figure out the corporation, like, and so on, can keep living. So these people, like in the gray economy, in formal economy, they cannot cooperate, like they cannot create corporation, so meaning like when their life cycle ends, their business usually ends, or their family and so on. And so that's the main problem here in Balkans. Like 30% is really high. That's average, like for it. So we are like 1/3 of our economy is being kept out of potential, not challenged. So that's my short, long answer to your first question.
Thank you. I totally agree with you that, well, in terms of a legal system and in terms of property rights, the late 17th, early 18th century in Great Britain, and the possibility for entrepreneurs and businessmen, as women were not granted the same rights back then. The right to associate, to create a free association, and to go beyond 6 people, because in the first place it was quite limited, gave the possibility to the western part of Europe to actually create those tremendous companies, the West Indies companies, or the Royal Company in France, first for trade purposes and then of course industrial purposes, something which we lacked here. But among the, so to speak, corporations, and I like very much the fact that you insist on both formal and informal institutions. One such a quasi-corporation, which has become an informal institution, not only in the Balkans, in Italy they're doing quite well as well, and that outlives its members, is obviously what we call the mafia, or the groups of organized crime, etc. And in terms of finances, and of course I look towards Simon for say his opinion on the challenges that in terms of management of finances when it comes to entrepreneurship this brings, is that we have experienced over the 15-20 years quite a few quite an interesting, I would say, ride in terms of financial bubbles, financial crises. The Euro crisis started basically with our neighbors from Greece, although I don't want to put the blame on them. But we see a lot of financial innovations now, and they are based on an entrepreneurial spirit. We have a fintech industry, nascent fintech industry here in Bulgaria and elsewhere. And how does this or is this capable of compensating or altering or correcting a little bit the situation where almost 30% of the economy is captured within a gray area, within specific interests, often with protections from either the central administration or even from the political world? And can innovation in finances actually, in a way, clear a little bit our understanding of the economy and bring these 30% or so of informal economy into the GDP? I mean, shall we trust the entrepreneurial spirit in financial technologies to do what we have failed to do so far? Or if I can rephrase my question, shall we trust formal systems to do the job of lawmakers, administrators, all of those agencies of our societies which we entrusted with enforcing the rules and the regulations?
See, so we live in funny times now, because few weeks ago the Silicon Valley Bank failed, and that's a very regional bank in the US, and that's an old style bank, because back in the days, and this is, let's say, 19th century, you had an agricultural society that produced, let's say, potatoes in like a big area, and all of a sudden you needed a local bank that would provide money for the potato growers, and that used to work. Silicon Valley Bank was such a bank in 2023 that failed, and it's a bank of the old age, because now all of the banking can be done online. At the same time, you will see a lot of financial innovation inside the banking sector, that a lot of it is done online. And what I'm saying is true in a sense that when you see how much money has been put out in the first few hours when sort of the bank run happened, it was not done like back in the 1929 when the Great Depression happened and everybody went to the bank with their checking accounts, waiting in line. All of a sudden, all you needed was like a computer. I mean, not even a PC. All you can do is like take your phone, your smartphone, and that's how the money was pulled out. So there is on the banking side a change. On the other hand, like look at Amazon, for example. Amazon are entering so many markets. When at least for me, coming from Macedonia, when I think of Amazon, first and foremost, I think of, oh, that's a company that sells books, because that's how it started. That's how it's being stuck, and it's actually an IT company. Not even a retailer, basically just an IT company when you look at the core of Amazon. But Amazon now is trying to provide loans to people that sell on their page, basically. So all of a sudden you will see $500,000 loan, which is small number, but at the same time it's huge for small businesses, and they're entering that sector. So yes, your question was, can fintech, and this is not necessarily the fintech you were thinking of, because again, this is very new to Amazon, and they have not entered the market with both legs inside, because you need we have a lot of regulations that you have to follow. But my point is, banking will definitely change, and even businesses there are IT, between IT and retail, like Amazon will offer loans to businesses. So definitely there will be a chance. But with having said this, connecting fintech and the example of Amazon, the thing is, this works not only but mostly in already developed societies that already have a proper system in place, as Admir mentioned, already institutions that work and that support it. For example, coming from Macedonia, and we are not EU like you, means that to send money to even if it's not even if it's not like a paycheck, but from a friend to a friend, you will need to go to a bank to sign to sign that you have received the money. It's not done overnight. So my point being, we see a lot of fintech, but that does not traverse to entrepreneurship necessarily in underdeveloped countries. Look at, for example, the Middle East, and with what happened with Bitcoin and with crypto. They used a lot of Monero as money in some countries in the Middle East, especially during the Arab Spring, if I'm not after Arab Spring, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see those innovations, but they're still not overly used. For example, in Macedonia, in the past, let's say 10 to 15 years, there has been an IT sector growing because we are relatively good. We have relatively high mid-skill labor which is very cheap for Western companies, but on compared to our standards, is extremely high paid. So why some of the money that you're being paid is not directly through paycheck, but some it's paid through as a Payoneer, which is basically again what you've mentioned. Technically, a bank account that you have, I don't know, in the Cayman Islands or Belize or something like that, and which is legal, but at the same time you don't even pay income tax on it. Some it's paid over crypto, so you will see a lot of money coming to Macedonia, but at the same time, because of the legal restrictions, that money cannot be transferred into businesses, because once you go above a certain threshold, then you have very high taxes to be paid. At the same time, if you have money above some threshold, you have to sort of show how you got the money, and then you cannot reinvest it. And this is where the gray area sector comes in. And this, I presume that this happens even though Bulgaria is in the EU. I presume because it's underdeveloped compared to the West, it happens here as well. So the point is, we have the potential, we have relatively high skilled labor here in the Balkans, but because we don't have the proper institutions, we cannot reinvest, let's say, that capital, and this is institutional problem. Admir earlier mentioned energy, but my mind all of a sudden went to energy in a different way. For example, now with everything being green, investing in green energy is so important. In Macedonia, we have over 300 days of the year with sun, which means we are like not the Saharas, but like perfect place at the same time for investing in I don't know, sun collectors and getting energy from the sun. But the problem is, our legal system does not allow us to, let's say, properly produce energy. So those are the problems that come from the not advanced enough, let's say, legal institutions. And I was in January in Belgrade speaking with friends, and let's say they said that they had a lot of people escaping Russia, and who escapes Russia after the war, and some Ukrainians who can escape Russia, those people that can do remote work. And all of a sudden there are like in less than a year more than 20,000 new businesses being sprung up in Belgrade alone, or in Serbia, let's say. And all of a sudden that happens only not because Serbia is like the mecca for innovation, but because it is far better. Of course, Serbia and Russia have sort of a connection, but at the same time, they are allowed to open up new businesses in the IT industry, and this happens not because Serbia is the perfect place, but because it's far better than Macedonia, for example, or other places. So that's what we really need to. We are not gonna be the next Silicon Valley. Don't get me wrong. Serbia, Macedonia, Bulgaria. I will bet my life that we're not gonna be the next Silicon Valley, but we can be a Silicon Valley 3.0 or something like that tomorrow. That we maybe will not have the next Tesla or whatever, but for example, Croatia has Rimac, which is after all electric vehicle car manufacturer. So there is the potential, but we need a better legal system that can foster that innovation.
Thank you. When you say better legal system, and I perfectly understand, and I follow the efforts done in the Western Balkans. And of course, Admir can speak from with an insider view, but the efforts throughout the countries in the Western Balkans to towards EU accession with all the changes, the needed changes in legislations, in regulations, etc. And we have had the same effort here in Bulgaria. In a way, when it comes to formal institutions, because after all, that's what is supposed to at least make sure that our economic agents play on a level playing field, and competition is applicable to all. This effort of translating or transposing or just copying and pasting, so to speak, EU-compatible laws and regulations resulted in maybe somehow of some form of a disruption between the public and the public's understanding of what the rules, not the regulations, the rules are, and then what the at least explicit regulations, which are very often interpreted in a quite a free manner, are. So we find ourselves in a situation where there is, at least for Bulgaria, no reason to look forward to improving already existing regulations. The legal system is, so to speak, an EU-based legal system, and yet the results we would be looking for, or we would have expected and hoped for, are nowhere to be found. So, in terms of entrepreneurship, truly this the perception of the individual as a leader, as a game changer, as a risk taker, is there across the Balkans a different perception? And I like it very much that you mentioned, Admir, also a theological concept that comes into shaping the way economic activity by an individual or a group of individuals is seen. But is there a stigma for whatever cultural, historic, religious, or any other ideological reason or say origin, on the role of the entrepreneurship? You mentioned that there are in the Balkan languages here, and I'm sure it is the case for the Albanian language. If we have Albanian students here, they will find similar expressions, so to speak, common wisdom, where you do things your way, but you stay quiet and calm so that nobody can really see what you actually do. Do we dislike entrepreneurs in the Balkans? Is there one such a rejection of the idea that I can come with a bold plan that will change the way we'll do, and people will show up some resistance to that, and it would not be based on moral grounds? Obviously, some plans are not really ethically compatible with our ideals, but on a fear of change. Are we afraid of change?
Well, I think that's a good question. Are we afraid of change? Like, I think everyone is afraid of change, no matter does he live in Balkans and so on. But some societies, Western societies especially, figure out how to articulate that fear of change and how to create the game changers so that eventually the entire society will accept them. So every person in the world doesn't like change. That's why monopolies in economy happen. So if you if you create a business, you're in process of creating business. Probably you will be like economical liberal. But when you establish the business, you will say, okay, now we need to have regulations and so on. Everyone likes monopolies. Like monopolies, I like to have only one single wife in my marriage. Like I don't like to have a competition. I like to have monopoly on my relationship. I like to have monopoly on my kids. So monopolies are something that we like. And it's across the culture. It's really interesting, like that, meaning that we like the state that we are in. We really don't like the change. Although theoretically we speak about change affirmatively sometimes. We say it's good to have a change and so on. But innerly, like, and people who do psychology, like they figure out, innerly we always like don't accept change so easily. But when it comes to Balkans, that's maybe more institutionalized. It's more in institutionals. So the question is not do the individual does like change or not. The question is how do institutions regard change. So do we have institutions that are friendly towards change or unfriendly? I would say more unfriendly. So if someone is here like trying to disturb the institution to create a new paradigm and so on, probably he will get more resistance than in some other countries, even countries that were under communists. Let me take, for example, like Baltic countries, like Estonia and so on, which are leaders when it comes to digital transformation. So they're doing lots of things, with blockchain technology, using them for ledgers and so on, and property rights and so on. Probably, like if someone started the same to do in Bulgaria, there would be more institutional resistance. Why? Because we have some monopolies that are kept alive, kept in stake by institutions, and that's the problem. Like, so it doesn't matter what we as a personal think about it, but it does matter on the long term, because institutions are not from somewhere from heaven made and so on. They're made by those people who think like that. So they are a product of our thinking, but in a short term it doesn't matter what I feel about change, but it matters how my institution react to change. Unfortunately, in the long run, my institutions are the creation of my mind, of people throughout some times. And it's easier to change one's opinion, but it's really hard to change institution. And that's something I feel like you ask about formal institutions in Balkans. I think every one of us has really inner bad feeling about entrepreneurs. How do I know that if you just follow the culture, culture, we don't have Hollywood type movies, but when you have one guy that says like entire society is wrong, I'm right, I follow my cause, and eventually he wins. In Balkans, if we do movies like that, eventually the guy is tragic, he dies, and that's considered from common standards here a good movie, it's a tragedy, or it goes bizarre to humor, we don't have a middle in there, we don't have a true entrepreneur story, like someone took a risk on his career, life, family, but eventually he is a winner. That's a Hollywood plot. It's usually like extreme humor, it's a comedian, or we go to extreme tragedy, and people consider that good movies from Balkan standards. Everything is speaking that we are not so entrepreneur friendly. But why is it like that? Let me give some defense, arguments and so on. The history of this region was really crazy. Thanks God that we this is still people are saying what could happen. Why? Because we were the playing field of lots of empires. If you were under empire, of course the empire doesn't like extra entrepreneurship. It doesn't have self-initiative, individual potential, and so on. We didn't have Protestant ethics in United States that they had that. We didn't have constitutional democracies, constitutions, founding fathers, and so on, that tradition. So lots of empires, not so much ethnical, religious, and so on background that will. Even religious institutions, they're monopolies on religion, so they don't have entrepreneurs and so on. And eventually, after we finished all that, we got 50 years of communism. So and even like if you only had 50 years of communism, that's enough. Like as we see in Eastern Germany today, like even still today, like they have problems. Like all the surveys, like even like a recent survey I read, like they're more like people, they're more cheaters, like people who are more, how to say, friendly toward cheating in Eastern Germany than in Western. Why? Because you needed to cheat the communist system. So people get used to it, like 50 years of cheating, like the system that was really a good thing, something that we understand, like in Balkans. But
Entrepreneurial,
yeah, it's entrepreneur some way, like how to cheat the system. And but like, so we imagine that like Germany had 50 years of communism, and still today Eastern Germans cannot recover. If you look at their electoral system, if you look at the parties that win in Eastern Germany, totally different than Western Germany, although they're integrated from the fall of Berlin Wall and so on. Like the all extreme rights and extreme left parties, they're winning mostly in Eastern Germany. Like, and all the traditional conservative, all social democrats, they're mostly winning in Western Germany. So the change like mentally didn't happen. Like, and years passed, like more than 30 years. So we had that 50 years. We have empires, we had wars and so on. So it's really hard to argue like why should we be entrepreneur friendly? It's hard to change. Unfortunately, like formal institution we can change it in the short run. Informal, like it's really, I would like that it's not like that, but we are human beings. Like we're not robots, we are not AI, so we cannot be programmed, you cannot just put like EU institution and so on, expect that people will behave in the same way as they behave in Sweden, Germany. It's just not like that. And I know that people during the 90s, especially like people coming here trying to do some reforms, they were like so much ambitious about that. Like, let's just create those formal institution system will work, but eventually figure out that it's not like that. So I never create a fetish about formal institution. I think like we need to go deeper, and for that we need to have culture change and so on. But I don't think the government should do that, and that's the big question for us all. I think that private sector, we as individuals, private people, like we should be leaders of change. So you asked the question to Simon, like fintech and so on. I've been to India, lived there, Pakistan and so on. Like the biggest change when it comes to property rights, entrepreneurship, poor people is actually being done by simple mobile apps from fintech. They're enabling those people to have business communication. Not the government, not even the money, the paper money and so on. They're believing in apps. The problem right now is that those apps are still not safe as blockchain or cryptocurrency market show us. Like it's not so, although El Salvador and other countries like adopted it and so on, but still this technology is still being developed.
Okay.
Momchil, can I add one other thing regarding the view of the entrepreneur in at least in Macedonia? I'm gonna guess it's Russia and probably all the Balkans. In the 90s, we wanted to privatize everything, and some places it was in rare places it was done correct, but in Macedonia, although it was not as bad as Russia, we done privatization very bad manner, and all of a sudden you had like few oligarchs who technically got all the sweets, all the money, all the companies, and all of a sudden you think of entrepreneurship in two ways. One is like a Silicon Valley Bill Gates who worked in a garage, and that's not gonna happen ever in Macedonia, and I will agree 99 out of 100 times. The second entrepreneur is always the oligarch coming who steals everything, and that's like the culture part that I don't see changing. On the one hand, I don't see changing in the minds, but you can see that change, that although people don't recognize it, you can see that change happening already, especially in the hospitality industry, because before internet, before smartphones, before having cheap flights around for cheap flights that go from Macedonia to a lot of European countries, people in Macedonia were basically stuck in the 90s and early 2000s in Macedonia, and they did not get a chance to see a lot of stuff. And all of a sudden, in the past 10 to 15 years, you will find coffee shops that would put a cocktail or just like a lemonade or something in a jar that would have never happened 15 years ago or 10 years ago maybe, and now, and it's not something new that we invented. We basically copy pasted similar ideas from movies, from what we've seen in the I don't know, in the West. And the thing is, you will see that type of entrepreneurship happening on a large scale in Macedonia. When I say Macedonia, I mostly think of Skopje, because third of the country is there. But you will see a lot of that, and this is when I think of entrepreneurship, I think of something that happens when you don't necessarily interact with the administration, and you can see small scale entrepreneurship happening and making the lives of everybody better, both the owners and everybody else, just by escaping the formal part that connects you with the government, and just copy paste what works in the West and sort of reinvent and make stuff maybe in some cases even better. So what I think that entrepreneurship does in small countries like Macedonia that are sort of disconnected from the world is like copy and pasting everything. So we never managed to make administration be as good as Estonia, but at the same time we sort of walk around the administrative state, administrative part. We just pay the taxes when we must, and just. Sorry?
That's a good approach to things.
I mean that's how people do it. So we in the past 5 years there was like sort of a new program when you get like your receipt and there is a QR code, and once you scan the QR code, you would get some less of a percent, I don't know, of the VAT back, and it was kept at 10 euros a month, and people all of a sudden started getting it was like, oh my god, we're gonna get something back from the government, even though it was 10 euros a month, and the government thought that it's gonna bring the informal sector to the fold. No, it didn't. No, we will not. So my point is, people that have the opportunity not to pay tax do not pay the tax. People that have the opportunity not to be in any contact with the administration, because and someone, I don't know whether it was you or Admir, mentioning the laws in the formal sector. Back in 2006, with the new government, we wanted to make a European nation of Macedonia. That was we always wanted, but that was like the big try, let's say. And we had a very European style legal system. And on doing business, we were at some point number 6 in the world. But that was all on paper. When you see, yes, you have like a legal system that's basically copy-paste more or less from the European culture, but in practice, it says you need like 7 days to open up a business, but in practice it's like, I don't know, 2 months. You say to finish up, to sue Admir, I will need like, let's say on paper, 7 days or 30 days or whatever. Now we have like 40,000 court cases not being solved right now, and like the system is like in a gridlock, and no matter what you have in the formal sector regarding institutions, no matter what the law says, if they are not followed, and they're not, at least in Macedonia, you're in a gridlock and everything is slowed down. So the only way is to like go around the corner and escape.
Just one thing, like in defense of Macedonia, and you mentioned Macedonia a lot. I don't know, in Bulgaria, is this like offending? Like, are you doing that on purpose?
I live there, so that's all I know.
Welcome to Balkans.
Yeah, I'm joking. Like no one likes to pay taxes. Like 2 years ago in Norway, they had initiative, like they had voluntary taxes, and eventually I think it was $22,000 collected on the scale of Norway, which is like no one has a year's salary of that like amount. So when they ask people, can you like voluntary pay, no one wanted. So it's not just Macedonian or Balkanic or Bulgarian thing. It's like no one likes to pay taxes, which is okay. Like.
It is indeed. I like to joke with my students saying that we don't speak of tax evasion, we speak of fiscal optimization.
That's I agree in that.
Then they're like, oh, how do we do it? I'm like, oh. Good. Well, we have some minutes, and of course we will open the floor to the audience for questions and of course answers. But then maybe just give those young people a bit more of a positive note on entrepreneurship in the Balkans, as a recent survey from our marketing office shows that 13 to 14% of AUBGers, after they graduate, they actually do start a business, either as a side project, while they of course develop their career and skills in large corporations, or as truly as a startup company, and some are quite successful. Obviously, the IT sector is a very salient example of such successes. But if we could say hope for the future, and I really insist on that hope for the future, because from my studies on the Bulgarian economy, and maybe it is similar in other parts of the Balkans as well, we observe a very low degree of embeddedness of successful businesses. And I speak of small and medium-sized enterprises, not of the large corporations. But the embeddedness of those small and medium enterprises, which are crucial for the very fabric of society, socially and culturally, and of course from an economic and business perspective, usually their suppliers are foreigners, because maybe they cannot source qualitatively enough reliable supplies for their business processes, and their customers are abroad. One of the reasons, of course, is that maybe the added value is higher, but the other is that they stay below the radar. So for those 12, 13, 14, maybe hopefully 15% of our AUBG alumni, or to be, who would consider the opportunity of becoming entrepreneurs in the Balkans, not in the Silicon Valley, not in Stuttgart or anywhere else in the world, say London. Is there an optimistic note in our understanding of entrepreneurship, or shall we truly focus on the political entrepreneurship, the one which goes with lobbying, the one which goes with the defense of special interests, the one which goes with a very Balkanic way of using the deal over the table and under the table? I've lived in southern France, so it's not very, very different, but it has a more French way. So, is there hope to be seen after in terms of entrepreneurship here in the Balkans?
Just let me tell you a personal joke, anecdote. So I started like 2-3 companies and I failed, and then I went to politics.
Good.
Or I could go to academia, teaching and so. But that's not optimistic. Like, that should not be the path that people go. I hope that I will start my fourth company soon. So
Successful one.
Successful. Let me identify my biggest concern is brain drain, leaving of people from this area. Why? Because I think that one of the 3 factors of success of society is human capital. No resources, no territory, like all the dictators were wrong. It's people. So it's people who should be entrepreneurs one day. So that's like one negative factor that I see for the entire region. Positive factor is like that Balkan is becoming boring, and that's a good thing. And I'm referring to old Chinese saying, like they're praying for a year that will be boring, like with no big events. Yeah. No Ukraine crisis, no COVID-19, no huge catastrophes, just a boring year. It would be great that we have a boring period. I think we have it so far. So if we can achieve that boredness, so being boring, well, I think eventually that things are going well. Like 2-3% is the average growth of the region. That's okay. It's not okay if you compare yourself to Germany and so on, but it's okay if you compare like to the early generations, their achievements and so on. So I think people generally like things are going better in this, like, and we cannot stop that. That it's something that we're moving just because we're part of European continent and so on. Entire world GDP is rising high. So that's my take on optimism. I'm really optimism. I hope that we'll not have those events, but unfortunately people they're not, if you look historically, people are not used to live in peace and boring periods. They like, you know, everyone is saying like Third World War or something will happen. Like everyone, we have some kind of I don't know, personal initiative that we want something to happen, like, and so on, to be something, a great scenario and so on. But it would be ideal for the next 100 years just to be boring enough so we can start our businesses, develop companies. We need that. We need continuity of business. We didn't have that because of the communism empires and so on. So that's my take. I'm really, truly an optimist. Although I think that the biggest lagging factor is people leaving. We cannot stop that. If you're a politician saying that you can stop leaving people of your country, you're populist, definitely. I speak that because I'm in inner circle. Like in every country, people are saying that you cannot stop. Every country, I think only Poland, from these like from East, they right. I think from the last year they can say like we achieved something. Every other country is a serious brain drain. People leaving. The question is now not how to stop them. The question is, can you slow the trend, and can you bring them back? Those are the real question. Populist question is that we can stop them. We cannot stop. No one has a strategy. Like no one from these countries. Poland started to achieve some results, but we are all from Balkans far away from that.
Sure. I understand that it's new. Good. And because it's my prerogative and a privilege, if there is a question from the audience, only one question will be asked. If there is no questions, sir.
Yes. So I have a question. I have only one question.
Only one question. You're the only one to ask something, so it has to be very interesting.
Okay, so we talked about, for instance, communism that happened in this region and it slowed down, and you gave an example with how even East Germany right now has troubles adapting. This is sort of connected with the fear of change that there is, you know, everyone has psychologically some fear of change. But I don't think I agree with you on the issue that this is, not to defend communism, but I don't agree with you that the issue is that the regime that we went through. Actually, for the economy of Bulgaria, it had a positive impact. We went from second to last economy in Europe to for a period of time second in the Soviet Union. So, but to give an example, when a radical change happened, when the regime fell, everyone went into this wild, like, capitalism. They didn't know what to do. Actually, from stories I've heard, in Bulgaria was pretty much anarchy. And to give like an even better example, the biggest market for heroin in the world is Russia. And it's not Russia, the regions that Moscow and St. Petersburg, but it's actually the regions around Russia, which were so afraid that it was just going to be chaos and crime and everything. So the problem here is that yes, we lost a lot of development in the free market altogether. And this affects our view on entrepreneurship and so on. But we didn't take the change gradually, step by step. You still need some form of centralized government in order to do that.
Short answer.
Sir.
Really good question. So free markets, capitalism is not anarchy. I agree. Like if you look at the GDP of Bulgaria, like huge decline after communism. You're totally right there. And but I like even in former Yugoslavia, people say like communism brought industrialization. Yes, that's correct. In Romania, in Bulgaria, and entire Balkans. But my counter question to that would be like, what was the opportunity cost? If we entered EU, like the idea of EU in 45, we were like free democracies. maybe we could be more developed, more industrialized than the communism. We don't know that scenario. I cannot argue for that scenario, but that's the it's really sometimes hard to differ the zeitgeist, the technological societal change and ideological change. Meaning that probably all the countries, most of the countries from 95 towards 90s, they developed in some way, they industrialized in some way because that was zeitgeist, the moment of time, like, not the ideology. My question is or my argument is capitalism or free market countries developed faster and more organically. The communists developed slower and they developed more, how to say, not organic, what does it mean? So eventually, like you can see that at Soviet Union, eventually during the 80s and 90s, they showed like why that was fictional development. Even the United States during the 80s thought that Soviet Union was an economical giant and so on. But beneath that, you have like lots, and that's Austrian School of Economics, from Wenger to Mises, malinvestment.
Yeah.
Malinvestment was a key problem of centralized government to communism. And that actually opened during the 90s, at the beginning of the 90s in Bulgaria, it opened and we show it. But you're totally right. The structure was gone. And I'm not arguing that people, like strong centralized institution, it's okay if it's on the basis of market principle, human rights and so on. I would agree, people like structure. Anarchy is not something like that that's common to human race, and it cannot lead to progress.
Can I answer a bit?
It's always...
I'm afraid you have to answer in private to Admir. Thank you very much. Thank you to our guests, Simon and Admir. Thank you all. And after a short lunch break, we shall see you for the second panel. Thank you.
Financial.